My name is Ava Monroe. I'm 33, and I found my rock bottom inside a commercial dumpster. I was foraging behind a foreclosed mansion, my hands buried in garbage, when a woman in a suit so sharp it could cut glass approached me. "Excuse me, are you Ava Monroe?" she asked, her voice calm and measured. I was holding a grimy, tarnished candelabra, my fingers caked with filth. The words of my ex-husband, Mark, still echoed in my head, a fresh wound from just 3 months ago. "No one will ever want a destitute, homeless woman like you." He wasn't wrong. Nothing quite says architectural genius like digging through trash at sunrise on a Tuesday, looking for things to flip. I hoisted myself out of the dumpster, making a futile attempt to wipe the grime from my worn-out jeans. "That's me," I said. "If you're from collections, this candelabra is about all I've got." A faint smile played on her lips. "My name is Eleanor Vance. I am the attorney for the estate of Julian Croft." My heart seized. Uncle Julian, the man who had become my guardian after my parents died in a car crash, the man who had sparked my love for architecture, the man who had disowned me a decade ago when I chose a husband over a career. "Your great-uncle passed away 6 weeks ago," Eleanor continued, her tone gentle but professional. "He named you the sole beneficiary of his entire estate. Where are you watching from? Tell me your city in the comments below, and if you've ever been knocked down only to have life throw you an unexpected lifeline, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. You're not going to want to miss what happened next. Just 3 months before, my life was a picture of comfortable middle-class stability. I had a suburban house, a husband, and a degree in architecture that was doing little more than collecting dust on a shelf. My ex, Mark Thompson, had always insisted my working was unnecessary. I earned more than enough for both of us, he'd say, packaging his control as a romantic gesture, hiding the bars of the cage he was building around me. When I discovered his affair, with his own secretary no less, my carefully constructed world shattered. The divorce was a brutal, swift demolition. Mark had a high-powered legal team. I had a public defender and a sliver of fading hope. In the end, he kept the house, the cars, and all our savings. I walked away with a single suitcase and the stark realization that our prenuptial agreement was ironclad. His parting shot was, "Good luck finding anyone who wants damaged goods." So, I'd been surviving. I scavenged for discarded furniture, restored it in a small, rented storage unit, and sold the refurbished pieces online. It wasn't the life I'd envisioned, but it was a life I was building with my own 2 hands. Eleanor gestured toward a gleaming black Audi. "Perhaps we could continue this conversation somewhere more private." I glanced down at my filthy clothes and dirt-caked boots. "I'm not really dressed for an Audi." "You are the sole heir to an estate worth $60 million, she replied, her voice unwavering. "I assure you the car can handle a little dirt." $60 million. The number felt like a foreign language. I followed her to the car in a daze. Inside, the smell of clean leather was overwhelming. Eleanor handed me a thick manila folder. "Your uncle left you his penthouse in Chicago, his collection of vintage automobiles, several investment properties, and the controlling shares of his firm, Croft Designs. The firm itself is valued at approximately $55 million. I stared at the glossy photos of the penthouse, a space I'd only ever seen in the pages of Architectural Monthly, the Croft residence. It was Uncle Julian's masterpiece, a triplex penthouse that fused raw industrial elements with warm, organic materials. "There must be some kind of mistake," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "He cut me off 10 years ago." Eleanor's professional mask softened for a moment. "Mr. Croft never changed his will. You were always his sole heir. There is, however, a condition." Of course there was. "What is it?" "You are required to take on the role of CEO at Croft Designs. You must accept the position within 30 days and maintain it for a minimum of 1 year. If you refuse, or if you are removed from the position, The entire estate will be donated to the National Architecture Foundation." I let out a short, bitter laugh. I've never practiced architecture professionally, not for a single day. I graduated college at 21 and was married by 22. My husband treated my degree like it was some charming, useless hobby. "Mr. Croft always believed you would find your way back to your passion," Eleanor said softly. "He saw this as his way of making sure you had the chance." The car pulled up in front of a chic boutique hotel. "You'll be staying here tonight. Tomorrow we fly to Chicago. You have a meeting with the firm's board of directors. You have 29 days to decide." I looked down at the folder in my lap, at the images of a life I had sacrificed for a man who had thrown me away like the trash I'd been sifting through. This was the life Uncle Julian had always wanted for me. "I'll do it," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "What time do we leave?" Eleanor smiled. 8 o'clock in the morning. Pack light. Everything you need will be waiting for you in Chicago." I glanced at the plastic garbage bag in the trunk, which held my entire life. "Trust me," I said. "Packing light won't be a problem." The hotel suite was a palace compared to anywhere I'd stayed in years. As I stood under the hot spray of the shower, scrubbing the grime from beneath my fingernails, I caught my reflection in the fogged mirror. My cheeks were hollow, my eyes were shadowed with exhaustion, and my hair was a knotted mess. This was the version of me that Mark had created. My mind drifted back to my final year of architecture school. I was 21, and my design for a sustainable urban community center had just won the top prize at my senior exhibition. Uncle Julian had been there, beaming with pride. "You're going to change the world, kiddo," he'd said, his arm around my shoulders. "Next year, you come work at the firm. We'll make history." Mark, then a handsome and successful 32-year-old, had overheard. He introduced himself, lavished praise on my work, and asked me to dinner. 6 months later, we were engaged. 8 months after that, we were married. Uncle Julian refused to come to the wedding. "You're making a colossal mistake," he'd told me during our last heated phone call. "That man doesn't see a partner, he sees a trophy. You're walking right into a gilded cage." I was young, foolish, and blinded by what I thought was love. "You're just bitter because I'm choosing my own path," I had yelled. "No," he had replied, his voice heavy with a sadness I couldn't understand at the time. "I'm heartbroken. Because you're abandoning your gift, but you're an adult. It's your life to throw away." That was the last time we ever spoke. My holiday cards went unanswered. My calls on his 85th birthday went to voicemail. Even when I was at my most desperate, I couldn't bring myself to reach out. Mark's control had been insidious. First, he suggested I take some time to settle into married life before job hunting. Then, he actively discouraged me from taking my architectural licensing exam. "Why put yourself through all that stress, honey?" When I tried to take on small freelance projects from home, designing decks and sunrooms for neighbors, Mark would suddenly announce surprise weekend getaways, making it impossible for me to meet my deadlines. Eventually, I just stopped trying. My only rebellion was a secret one. I enrolled in online courses, subscribed to every architectural journal I could find, and snuck away to lectures whenever Mark was on a business trip. I filled dozens of notebooks with designs I knew would never be built, for projects I would never get to pitch. They were dreams that lived and died on paper. Mark found the notebooks once. "That's a cute hobby," he'd said, his voice dripping with condescending amusement. "But could you maybe focus on making sure the house is clean? The Millers are coming for dinner." I ordered room service, my first real meal in months. I pulled up the Croft Designs website on my laptop. It was a masterclass in digital elegance, showcasing iconic buildings across the globe, museums, skyscrapers, luxury homes, each one a monument to Julian Croft's genius. I found his official biography next to a photo of him from a few years ago. He was silver-haired and sharp-eyed, standing before the new wing of the Chicago Art Institute. The bio noted he was preceded in death by his wife, Evelyn, and had no children. But I had been his child in a way. After the accident that killed my parents when I was 15, Uncle Julian had become my whole world. He was the one who cultivated my love for buildings, taking me to construction sites on weekends and teaching me to see structures not as inanimate objects, but as living, breathing things. He paid for my entire education. He believed in me, and I had thrown it all away for a man who didn't even know the title of my thesis. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Eleanor. "A car will be waiting in the lobby at 8 a.m. sharp. Please bring all of your belongings. You will not be returning to the hotel." I looked at the single garbage bag that contained everything I owned, a suitcase of old clothes, my laptop, and 15 notebooks filled with a decade of secret designs. That was it. That was everything. I spent the rest of the night with those notebooks spread across the king-sized bed, tracing the evolution of my own artistic voice. My earliest sketches were heavily influenced by Uncle Julian's style, but as the years went on, a distinct perspective began to emerge, a fusion of sustainable green design with timeless classical forms, buildings that felt both futuristic and ancient. Mark's opinion no longer mattered. In truth, it never really had. At 8 a.m., I was in the lobby, my garbage bag slung over my shoulder, my head held high. Eleanor was waiting in the car. "Did you sleep well?" she asked. "Better than I have in a long, long time. What's the plan when we get to Chicago?" "First, we'll go to the Croft residence. Then you have a 2 o'clock meeting with the board. They are fully expecting you to decline the CEO position. Several of them have been circling for months, hoping to divide the company among themselves." Why would they think I'd say no? Eleanor's smile was thin but knowing. "Because you have no recent experience in the industry. Most people would find the proposition of running a firm this size terrifying. Good thing I'm not most people. And for the record, I know a great deal about architecture. I just haven't had the opportunity to practice it." As we stepped onto a private jet, the sheer surreality of my situation washed over me. Yesterday, I was dumpster diving. Today, I was flying to Chicago. Tomorrow, I would be the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. The universe, it seemed, had a very strange sense of humor. The Chicago skyline rose up to greet us as we made our final descent. I'd never been to the city before. Mark had a strong aversion to large cities, preferring the sterile predictability of the suburbs where he could control every aspect of our environment. The car wound through streets I'd only ever seen in movies before, turning onto a quiet, tree-lined avenue. The Croft residence was a stunning mid-block penthouse that crowned a sleek, modern skyscraper, its design both powerful and welcoming. The facade was a marvel, with innovative solar panels integrated directly into the glass and a series of cascading terraced gardens. "Welcome home," Eleanor said softly. "Have you ever experienced a single moment that felt like it changed the entire trajectory of your life? Share your story in the comments, because even today, I'm still trying to process that feeling." A woman in her late 60s with a kind face and warm eyes was waiting for us at the entrance. "Ms. Monroe, I'm Clara. I was your uncle's housekeeper for 35 years. She paused, her eyes welling up slightly. "I took care of you for a while, too, right after your parents passed. You were so young, so lost in your grief. You probably don't remember, but I always remembered you." The memory surfaced, hazy but real. I did remember her. A gentle presence who would bring me sandwiches and find me curled up and crying in Julian's vast library. "Clara," I said, pulling her into a hug. "Thank you for everything you did for me back then." "Welcome home, my dear. Your uncle never lost faith that you would come back." The interior was breathtaking. Exposed brick walls flowed into clean, modern lines. World-class art hung on every wall, and the furniture was a masterful mix of high design and deep comfort. This wasn't just a home. It was a living manifesto on the power of architecture. Your uncle's suite is on the main floor, Clara said, guiding me through the expansive space. But he had the entire top floor converted into a personal studio for you. He did it about 8 years ago. I stopped walking. 8 years ago? But we weren't speaking. Clara's smile was tinged with sadness. Mr. Julian never stopped believing you'd come home. He used to say your talent was too great to be buried forever. He kept this space ready for the day you found your way back to yourself. The top floor was an architect's dream come to life. Floor-to-ceiling windows provided a breathtaking panoramic view of the city. There were massive drafting tables, a state-of-the-art computer station with multiple monitors, and cabinets filled with every conceivable supply. And there, pinned to the center of a large corkboard, was the original sketch from my college exhibition. I reached out and touched the corner of the paper, my vision blurring with tears. He had kept it all this time. He was so incredibly proud of you, Clara said quietly from behind me. He told me once that your talent was being wasted but not lost. He said you would find your way back to it when the time was right. Eleanor appeared in the doorway. The board meeting is in an hour. Would you like to get ready? Clara had already arranged for clothes to be delivered. In the master bedroom, I discovered a walk-in closet filled with immaculate professional attire, all in my size. I selected a charcoal gray pantsuit that made me feel, for the first time in a decade, like the architect I was always meant to be. Downstairs, a man in his late 30s was talking with Eleanor. He was tall and handsome, with dark hair and kind, intelligent eyes that were now assessing me with open curiosity. "Ava Monroe," he said, extending a hand. "I'm Liam Donovan, a senior partner at Croft Designs. I worked alongside your uncle for 12 years. The Liam Donovan? You're the one who designed the Lakefront Museum Pavilion." His eyebrows shot up in surprise. "You know my work?" "I know everyone's work. I may not have been practicing, but I never stopped studying. The way you integrated biophilic design principles into that pavilion was revolutionary. It was absolutely brilliant." A flicker of a new emotion crossed his face. Respect. "So you're not just Julian's charity case. Good. The board is going to come at you with everything they've got." "Liam?" Eleanor cautioned. "No, it's okay. He's right," I said. "They expect me to crumble." "Uncle Julian knew that too." Liam smiled. "Julian once told me you were a genius, but that life had beaten you down. He said the woman who walked into that boardroom today would tell us everything we needed to know about whether you had survived." I thought of Mark. I thought of digging through dumpsters. I thought of Uncle Julian keeping a studio for me for 8 years, fueled only by the hope that I would one day return to it. "Well then," I said, my voice firm, "let's not keep them waiting." The offices of Croft Designs occupied 3 floors of a downtown skyscraper. As we stepped out of the elevator, heads turned and conversations fell silent. In the main conference room, 8 people were seated around a massive mahogany table, all of them looking at me as if I were something unpleasant they'd stepped in. "Ladies and gentlemen," Eleanor began, "this is Ava Monroe, Julian Croft's great niece and the incoming CEO of this firm." A man in his 50s with a sour expression, a Mr. Richard Davies, leaned back in his chair. "With all due respect, Ms. Monroe has never worked a single day in this field. This entire situation suggests Julian's mental state was not clear at the end." "Actually, Mr. Davies," I said, my voice calm and steady. My uncle was thinking with perfect clarity. He understood that this firm needed a fresh perspective, not the same old guard who are content to rest on past achievements. I pulled one of my notebooks from my bag. This is a design for a sustainable mixed-use high-rise that I developed 3 years ago. It incorporates a rainwater harvesting system, a green roof, and passive solar design principles. I had 14 more notebooks just like it, a decade of secret work, done because my ex-husband believed my passion was just a cute hobby. Davies barely glanced at my drawings, his expression a mask of dismissal. But I saw a few of the other board members lean forward, their interest piqued. A woman spoke up. Even if the designs have some merit, running a firm of this magnitude requires business acumen, client management, project oversight. You're absolutely correct, I agreed, which is why I plan to rely heavily on the brilliant team already in place, especially Liam. I'm not here to pretend I know everything. I'm here to learn, to lead, and to honor my uncle's legacy by pushing this firm into the future. If any of you find yourselves unable to work for a leader who prioritizes innovation over comfortable mediocrity, you are more than welcome to resign. Eleanor produced a stack of contracts. Those of you who choose to stay will sign new employment agreements. Those who do not can collect their severance packages on the way out. You have until the end of the day to make your decision. As the meeting disbanded, Liam came over to me. That was quite a show. You just alienated half the board. But the half that matters is intrigued, the half that still respects vision. And did you alienate me? Julian told me a year ago that if anything happened to him, my job was to help you succeed. He said you'd been buried alive for 10 years, and that when you finally broke free, you'd be a force of nature. I think he was right. I looked out the expansive window at the Chicago skyline. He usually was. Though his taste in board members could use some work, Davies looks like he kicks puppies for fun. Liam laughed, a genuine warm sound. You're going to fit in just fine. My first week was a baptism by fire. Liam became my shadow and my guide, walking me through every active project, introducing me to clients, and giving me a crash course in the firm's complex office politics. It felt like coming home to a country I had only ever read about. Your uncle had a unique management style, Liam explained as we stood in my new office. It was Julian's old space, mostly cleared out, but he'd left a few of his favorite things: a vintage 1960s drafting table, a worn leather armchair that still held the faint scent of his pipe tobacco, and scale models of his most iconic buildings. Let me guess, I said. Brilliant, demanding, and utterly impossible to please. Liam chuckled. Close. He demanded excellence, but he gave his team the freedom to find it on their own terms. He'd rather see a spectacular failure born from a bold idea than a mediocre success born from playing it safe. I understood that perfectly. It was exactly how Uncle Julian had been with me when I was a teenager. My computer chimed. It was an email from Davies, sent to all senior staff. Moving forward, all design concepts must receive full board approval before being presented to clients. I looked at Liam. This isn't how Julian ran things. Not even close. Julian trusted his architects. Davies is trying to undermine your authority before you even get started. I hit reply all. This new policy is rescinded, effective immediately. Croft Designs became a leader in this industry because we empower our designers and trust their expertise. As per the existing company charter, board approval is only required for final project budgets exceeding $10 million. I hit send. Liam's eyebrows disappeared into his hairline. You just publicly shut him down. Good. Mark spent 10 years making me second-guess every instinct I had. I'm done letting insecure men tell me I need their permission to do my job. Davies replied almost instantly, his email dripping with fury, demanding a private meeting. I agreed, asking Liam to join me. When Davies stormed into my office, his face was a mask of cold rage. Miss Monroe, I am trying to protect this company's reputation. By subverting established protocols and undermining the CEO, that's an interesting strategy. Your uncle may have left you the company, but I own 30% of it. I have been here for over 20 years. I will not stand by and watch you drive it into the ground. I leaned back in Julian's chair, feeling its solid weight behind me. Let me be perfectly clear. My uncle left me the controlling interest. You can choose to work with me, or you can choose to work against me. But if you choose the latter, you will lose. I suggest you take the weekend to think very carefully about which side of that choice best serves your own interests. After he left, slamming the door behind him, Liam let out a low whistle. Where did that come from? I managed a smile, though my hands were trembling under the desk. From 3 months of eating out of dumpsters and deciding I'd rather fail on my own terms than succeed on anyone else's. Also, I've been binge-watching a lot of corporate dramas. Apparently, I learned a few things. That evening, exploring the office on my own, I discovered a series of filing cabinets in Julian's private study. One drawer was labeled simply with my name. Inside, I found folders organized by year, my undergraduate projects, a newspaper clipping of my wedding announcement, a few candid photos of me at different stages of my marriage, my smile looking more strained and hollow with each passing year. In the most recent folder, there were printouts of articles about my divorce and court documents detailing just how thoroughly Mark had fleeced me. Beneath it all was a letter, written in Julian's familiar, elegant script, dated just 2 months before his death. Ava, if you are reading this, it means you finally came home. I am so sorry for my stubborn pride. I should have called 1,000 times, but I was so hurt that you chose so poorly. And by the time I was ready to swallow my pride, it felt like too much time had passed. I watched you diminish, year after year. I wanted to intervene, but Clara convinced me you had to find your own way out. She was right. You had to be the one to choose to leave. This company was always meant for you. From the moment you moved in at 15 and I found you in my library studying my blueprints, I knew you were my successor, not because of blood, but because of talent. You are brilliant. In your studio, there is something for you in the bottom right drawer of the filing cabinet. Use it wisely. And Ava, I am so proud of you. I was always proud, even when my pride wouldn't let me say it. Jay. Back at the penthouse, I went straight to the studio. The drawer was locked, but a small key was taped to the underside. Inside, I found a collection of 15 leather portfolios, each embossed with a year. They held Julian's earliest work, not the polished final drawings, but the raw, messy process of creation. Here were the failed concepts, the scratched-out ideas, the frantic notes in the margins. It was a complete history of his genius in the making. A note tucked into the first portfolio made my eyes well up. These are my failures, my false starts, my terrible ideas that eventually became good ones. I am giving them to you because young architects need to see that even legends struggle. Use them to teach, to inspire, to remind yourself that brilliance is not born fully formed. It is built, one imperfect sketch at a time. Just as you are building yourself back now, love, Jay. By morning, I had a plan. When Liam arrived, I was sketching furiously at one of the drafting tables. What's all this? It's a mentorship program. We'll call it the Croft Fellowship. We'll bring in a dozen of the brightest, most promising architecture students from diverse backgrounds. We'll show them these portfolios. Let them learn from Julian's entire process, not just his successes. We'll give them real project experience, paid internships, a real voice at the table. Liam studied my sketches. That's expensive, and it's time-consuming. That's the entire point. We're not just building structures anymore. We're building the next generation of architects. Julian would have loved it. He would have, Liam agreed, his voice soft with emotion. You're not just trying to be Julian. You're becoming exactly who he always hoped you would be. I looked up at him, grateful. Thank you for not treating me like I have to prove myself to you every 5 minutes. You proved yourself the day you walked into that boardroom. Everything since has just been confirmation. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. I opened the text message and my blood ran cold. Congratulations on the inheritance. Looks like you landed on your feet after all. We should talk. Sir Mark. He must have seen an article about my appointment as CEO. Of course he had. I showed the text to Liam, whose expression immediately darkened. Want me to handle it? I looked at the message, at Mark's pathetic attempt to slither back into my life now that I had money, and I felt nothing. Just a distant, hollow pity for him. No, I said, deleting the message and blocking the number without a second thought. He's not worth a response. He's already a ghost in my story. And it was true. Mark was fading, becoming a footnote in a narrative that was finally getting interesting. The Sterling Tower project was my first major client presentation as CEO. A tech mogul wanted a groundbreaking new headquarters in Seattle. Sustainable, iconic, a true statement piece. It was exactly the kind of project Croft Designs was made for. I spent 3 weeks collaborating with our top engineers. The final design featured a green roof, a sophisticated rainwater reclamation system, and smart glass that could adjust its tint to optimize natural light and temperature control. The building would be alive, responsive to its environment. Liam called it exceptional. He said Julian would be proud. The presentation was scheduled for 10 a.m. I arrived at 9:45 to find that my laptop was missing. My physical models were on the conference table, but the computer containing my entire digital presentation had vanished. Looking for this, Davies stood in the doorway holding my laptop with a smug look on his face. I found it in the break room. Someone must have misplaced it. Right, I thought, and I'm the Queen of England. But I had no time to argue. I opened the laptop and tried to launch the presentation. The file loaded, but as I connected it to the main screen, my stomach dropped. The file was corrupted. The slides were a jumbled mess of broken images, and the 3D renderings had been replaced with glaring red error messages. "Everything all right, Ava?" Liam asked as he walked into the room with the clients. I had about 30 seconds to make a choice. I could panic, postpone the meeting, and admit defeat, or I could do what Julian would have done. "Actually," I said, closing the laptop with a confident smile, "let's do this the old-fashioned way. Mr. Sterling, you said you wanted a building that tells a story, so let me tell you one." I moved to the large whiteboard at the front of the room and began to sketch, my hand moving with a certainty forged over 10 years of secret practice. I drew the building's elegant silhouette, explaining how its form was inspired by the surrounding mountain landscape, how every curve and angle served a purpose. Traditional architecture often treats buildings as static objects, I said, my marker flying across the board. But your headquarters will be dynamic. It will be alive. I drew arrows to illustrate airflow patterns, water collection systems, and the seasonal path of the sun. In the summer, the smart glass darkens to reduce solar heat gain. In the winter, it becomes fully transparent to maximize passive heating. Sterling leaned forward, his eyes alight with fascination. I kept drawing, kept talking, explaining every single design choice. Liam quietly handed me a set of colored markers, and I began adding depth, shadow, and life to the drawing. 45 minutes later, the entire whiteboard was covered in a comprehensive, hand-drawn representation of my vision. It was raw, honest, and fueled by a passion that was impossible to fake. Sterling stood up and walked to the board, studying it intently. This is exactly what I wanted. Someone who understands that buildings are living systems. When can you start? After they left, having agreed to the terms on the spot, I finally allowed myself to breathe. Liam was grinning from ear to ear. That was beyond extraordinary. Someone corrupted my files. It was deliberate sabotage. I know. Davies borrowed your laptop yesterday afternoon. Said he wanted to review the project timelines. It doesn't matter. He wanted me to fail. Instead, he just gave me the opportunity to show everyone in this company that I don't need a fancy PowerPoint. The work speaks for itself. That evening, I called an emergency board meeting with Eleanor present as legal counsel. "I want to address the events of this morning," I began, my voice cold. My presentation files were deliberately corrupted in an attempt to undermine my credibility with a major client. Davies shifted uncomfortably in his seat. That's a very serious accusation. It is, which is why I had our IT department trace the file modifications. The corruption originated from your desktop computer yesterday at 6:47 p.m. A dead silence fell over the room. Davy's face flushed a deep, blotchy red. I was reviewing the files. If something was there was nothing accidental about corrupting every single backup and iteration of that file, Liam said coldly. I was testing her. Davies finally snapped, his voice rising. Julian left this entire company to an untested amateur. I laughed. You wanted to see if I would crumble under pressure? Mr. Davies, I spent 3 months of my life living out of a storage locker and digging through dumpsters for furniture to sell for food. You corrupting a computer file doesn't even register on my scale of difficulty. But sabotaging the interests of this company to soothe your own fragile ego makes you a liability. I stood up. So here is what's going to happen. You are going to resign, effective immediately. In return, the company will buy out your 30% stake at fair market value, and you will sign a non-disparagement agreement. The alternative is that I file a formal complaint with the Architectural Board, which will trigger a lengthy legal battle that will utterly destroy your reputation. The choice is yours. You have until the end of business tomorrow. After the meeting, Liam found me staring out the window at the city lights. You handled that perfectly. Did I? Part of me just wanted to see him ruined. But you gave him an exit that protects his dignity while neutralizing the threat. That's leadership. Julian used to say that the true mark of a leader isn't how they celebrate success, but how they handle the people who try to tear them down. I turned to face him. Liam, why are you really helping me? You could have made a play for this company yourself. He was quiet for a moment. Julian did ask me to, yes, but I'm not doing this for him anymore. In 1 month, you've already begun to transform this place. The fellowship program, the way you speak to the junior architects, your philosophy of buildings as living systems. You're bringing the passion back. He took a step closer. And because I've watched you work, I've seen your talent. I believe in your vision. The next morning, Davies' resignation was on my desk. The company bought out his shares, which were then redistributed among the remaining board members and key employees. The most significant obstacle to my leadership was gone. But I had a feeling the truly difficult challenges were only just beginning. 2 weeks after Davies' departure, Clara found a leather-bound journal tucked away behind a row of Julian's architecture books. Miss Monroe, I think you should read this. It's your uncle's diary. There are many entries about you. The journal spanned 15 years, from when I first came to live with him until just weeks before his death. The entries about my marriage were a punch to the gut. March 15th, 10 years ago. Ava married Mark today. I refused to go. Clara says I'm being cruel. Perhaps. But I cannot watch someone I raised walk willingly into a cage. I told her he was a controller. She chose him anyway. Now all I can do is wait and hope she finds her way back. December 8th, 9 years ago. Heard through a mutual friend that Ava isn't working. Mark won't allow it. My brilliant girl wasting her talent in suburban silence. I want to call. Clara forbids it. She says Ava has to see it for herself, that my interference would only make her more defensive. I hate that she's right. July 22nd, 8 years ago, broke ground on the studio on the top floor today. Clara thinks I'm a fool preparing a space for someone who may never return. But I have to believe she will. The studio is my act of faith. April 8th, 5 years ago. Saw Ava at a charity event. Mark had his hand on the small of her back all night, steering her like a show pony. She looked exhausted, her smile brittle. I tried to catch her eye, but she looked away. I don't think she even sees how she's shrinking anymore. January 30th, 3 years ago. Heard Mark is having an affair. Apparently everyone knows but Ava. Part of me wants to tell her. But again, Clara is right. She has to find out on her own. She needs to be angry enough to leave. If I tell her, her pride might make her try to save the marriage. September 20th, 6 months ago, Ava filed for divorce. Thank God. This is her chance. The divorce will be hell, but she is stronger than she knows. March 8th, 8 weeks ago. The doctors say I'm fading faster than we thought. The pain is significant, but I find I am content. Eleanor has her instructions to find Ava after I'm gone. The rest will be up to her. She will either rise to the challenge or find her own way. Either way, she'll finally be free. That was all I ever really wanted for her. Love always, Julian. I sat in his study, tears streaming down my face, a mix of grief, gratitude, and an overwhelming love for the man who had built a studio for me 8 years before I would need it, just in case. He loved you so much, Clara said from the doorway. Everything he did, it was from that love. He was afraid if he pushed too hard, you'd pull away for good. So he waited, and he made this place ready for you to come home to. I wasted so much time. No, my dear, you learned what you needed to learn. Julian understood that. That night, I called Liam. Can you come over to the estate? There's something I need to show you. He arrived within the hour. I handed him the journal without a word. He read in silence for a long time. When he finally looked up, his expression was careful. How are you doing? Scene. Julian understood me better than I ever understood myself. Liam moved closer. For what it's worth, he was right. The Ava Monroe who walked into that boardroom couldn't have existed without everything you went through. He mentioned you, said you would help me, that you'd understand what he was trying to do. I didn't know about the journal, but yes, he talked to me about you. About a year before he passed, he told me his brilliant niece was wasting her life and that when she finally broke free, she would need someone in her corner who wouldn't try to control her. He made me promise to support you. So that's why you've been so helpful? Obligation? It started that way, Liam admitted. But Ava, I stopped doing this for Julian weeks ago. Now I'm doing it because I get to watch you become more yourself every single day. That's not obligation. That's admiration. He took my hand, his touch gentle. And if I'm being completely honest, it's more than admiration. But you just escaped a terrible marriage. The last thing I want to do is pressure you. I looked at our joined hands. What if I'm ready to not be afraid? A slow smile spread across Liam's face. Then we'll figure it out. Together, at whatever speed you need. No pressure, no expectations. Just two architects building something new. We stood on Julian's terrace. The city lights spread out before us, and for the first time in a decade, I felt a profound sense of hope. Not just for my career, but for my entire life. Julian had given me back my belief in myself. He had proven that sometimes the people who love you most have to stand back and let you fall, because it's the only way you can learn that you're strong enough to get back up on your own. The greatest inheritance wasn't the money or the company. It was the gift of believing you were capable of building something extraordinary. The Croft Fellowship launched 3 months after I became CEO. We received over 300 applications for just 12 positions. Liam and I spent weeks poring over portfolios. This one, I said, pointing to a submission. Isabella Rossi. She's designing modular homeless shelters that incorporate urban farming. She sees architecture as a tool for social justice. Liam studied her work. She's young, only 22, no professional experience. Neither did I when Julian took a chance on me. That's the whole point. The fellows arrived in September, their faces a mix of excitement and nerves. I gathered them in the studio. Your presence here isn't charity, I told them. It's an investment. Julian Croft believed that great architecture is born from diverse voices. You will work on real projects alongside our senior architects. Your ideas will be heard, challenged, and sometimes they will be built. Welcome to Croft Designs. Isabella approached me afterward, her hands trembling slightly. "Ms. Monroe, thank you. My family—" They didn't understand why I wanted to study architecture. I smiled. "Let me guess. They said it was a nice hobby, but not a practical career?" "Exactly. People who don't understand passion will always try to shrink it. My ex-husband spent 10 years telling me my degree was a cute but useless piece of paper. Don't ever let anyone make you feel small for dreaming big." The program was intense. The fellows worked 40-hour weeks on active firm projects while also developing their own designs under mentorship. A few of the older architects grumbled, but most embraced the new energy. By November, Isabella's community shelter design had caught the eye of a nonprofit organization, building a new facility in Chicago's South Side. They wanted Croft Designs to lead the project, with Isabella as the primary designer under supervision. "This is too much responsibility," Isabella fretted. "You're an architect," I told her. "Start acting like one." The project became Isabella's proving ground. Critics in the industry questioned whether we were exploiting young talent. I responded in an interview with Architectural Monthly. "The Croft Fellowship is not about cheap labor. It's about dismantling the systemic barriers that keep talented people out of this profession." Isabella comes from a working-class immigrant family. She could never have afforded the unpaid internships that are standard in this industry. Programs like ours are designed to ensure that talent, not privilege, is the primary driver of success. The article, which featured photos of our fellows, went viral. Within a week, 3 other major firms announced similar mentorship programs. "You're changing the entire industry," Liam said one evening. "I'm just doing what Julian taught me." Though I'm sure he'd have some sarcastic comment about it taking me 10 years to finally get it. Liam had become more than a partner at work. We had fallen into a comfortable rhythm of late nights at the office, takeout dinners, and endless conversations about everything and nothing. The attraction between us was a constant, simmering presence, but we had both been careful to keep things professional. That changed at the company holiday party in December. I had spent the day on site at the South Side project with Isabella, watching her command a construction crew with a newfound confidence. By the time I arrived at the party, I was late, windswept, and genuinely happy. Liam found me by the bar, his tie already loosened. "You missed the speeches." "Let me guess." Everyone thanked everyone. Someone told a terrible joke, and Brenda from accounting had too much eggnog. He laughed. "In that exact order." The DJ put on a slow song. Liam held out his hand. "Dance with me?" I hesitated. This felt like crossing a line we had tacitly agreed not to cross. But then I looked at his face and I thought about Julian's journal and about building something new. One dance. He pulled me close, and we swayed to the music. We didn't talk. We just moved together. "Ava," he said softly, his voice barely a whisper against my hair. "I know we agreed to keep things professional. We did. And I know you're still healing. I am. But I need to tell you something. I'm in love with you. Not falling in love, but completely, totally, head over heels in love. I will wait as long as you need me to, or I will step back completely, if that's what you want. But I couldn't go another day without you knowing." My heart hammered against my ribs. A part of me wanted to run, but a much bigger part, the part that had learned to take bold risks, wanted to leap. "I'm terrified," I admitted. "Mark made me doubt everything about myself. What if I'm not ready? What if I mess this all up? Then we'll figure it out together. I'm not Mark. I don't want to change you. I love who you are right now. The brilliant architect who can improvise a multi-million-dollar presentation on a whiteboard and starts a fellowship program just to shake things up. That's not a person who needs fixing." I kissed him then, right there on the dance floor, in front of half the company. It was impulsive and probably very complicated, but it felt absolutely right. When we broke apart, the room had gone quiet. Then someone started clapping, and suddenly the entire room erupted in applause. I buried my face in Liam's shoulder, laughing. "Well," he said, grinning down at me, "so much for professional boundaries." Julian said the best architecture is born from bold risks. I guess that applies to life too. What do you think is going to happen next? Drop your predictions in the comments section below. And don't forget to subscribe because this story is about to take a turn no one saw coming. The relationship with Liam changed everything and nothing at all. At the office, we were still chief executive officer and senior partner. But after hours, we were just Ava and Liam, learning each other's rhythms. He was endlessly patient with my lingering hesitations, never pushing, always there to ground me when my old fears surfaced. Unlike Mark, who had needed me to be small, Liam seemed to thrive on my success. "Tell me about the marriage," he asked one night in January as we sat in the penthouse library. It had been a month since we'd made things official. Snow was falling gently outside the massive windows. I tensed up. "Why?" "Because I see you waiting for me to turn into him. Every time you achieve something, you brace for impact. I want to understand what he did so I can make sure I never, ever echo it." I'd never really talked about the specifics with anyone, but Liam's face held nothing but genuine concern. He made me feel like I was always too much and not enough, all at the same time. My degree was a cute but impractical hobby. My ideas were amateur nonsense. When I got excited about a new architectural concept, he'd call me obsessive. When I was quiet, I was boring. It was a game I could never win. That was never about you, Ava. That was about his own insecurity needing you to feel small. I know that now, but for 10 years, I believed it. I kept making myself smaller and smaller, hoping it would make him happy. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. He still cheated. Liam took my hand. "Ava, you are the most extraordinary person I have ever met. Your passion isn't too much. It's the best part of you. The way your face lights up when you talk about buildings. The day you walked into that boardroom and refused to apologize for taking up space, I knew you were going to change everything." I kissed him, overwhelmed by the simple, profound difference between being celebrated and being erased. "I love you," I said. It was the first time I'd said it. "I'm still figuring out how to do this without being afraid, but I love you." "We'll figure it out together. That's the difference. We're a team." In February, Architectural Monthly ran their feature story. It wasn't just about the fellowship. It was about my entire journey, from dumpster diving to running one of the most prestigious firms in the country. It covered Julian's decade of quiet faith and the transformation of Croft Designs. The response was explosive. Media outlets wanted interviews. Universities invited me to speak. New clients were clamoring to work with us. My personal Instagram account gained 50,000 followers in a week. But with visibility came unwanted attention. Mark called on a Tuesday. I was in the middle of a meeting when my phone lit up with his name. I'd never bothered to change his contact info. I should probably get some therapy for that. I ignored the call. He called again. Then he texted. "Saw the article. Very impressive. We should talk." I showed the text to Liam, who just scowled. "Block him. I want to see what he wants first." The next message arrived a minute later. "I know I made mistakes. I see that now. Maybe we could get coffee? For closure?" I laughed out loud. "He wants back in now that I'm successful." "You are not meeting him." "God, no, but I am going to respond." I typed a quick reply. "Mark, you spent a decade convincing me I was worthless. You took everything from me and then told me no one would ever want a destitute, homeless woman. You were wrong about me then, and you are irrelevant to me now. Do not contact me again. Send, block, delete." It felt incredible. Liam pulled me into a hug. "How do you feel?" "Free. He doesn't get to be a part of this. He made his bed, and I've moved on to building skyscrapers." But Mark wasn't finished. He found Isabella on LinkedIn and sent her a message, claiming to be an old friend of mine. She immediately forwarded me the screenshots. Some guy named Mark Thompson messaged me, said he was your ex-husband and wanted to pass on his congratulations. I told him I don't act as a messenger service for my boss. Hope that was okay?" "That was perfect, Isabella. If he contacts you again, just block him." Mark's final attempt came via his lawyer. A formal letter requesting a meeting to discuss potential business opportunities and the possibility of reconciliation. Liam read it over my shoulder, his face dark with anger. He wants you to invest in his company. He's using your success to try and bail out his own failing business. Of course he is. He spent our entire marriage taking from me. You have to admire the sheer audacity. I had Eleanor draft a response. Ms. Monroe has no interest in any professional or personal association with Mr. Mark Thompson. Any further attempts at contact will be considered harassment and will be met with legal action. That finally stopped the calls, but it didn't stop Mark from talking. A former friend of ours reached out with a heads up. "Mark is telling everyone you manipulated a dying old man to steal his company. He's trying to undermine you." I should have been furious. Instead, I just felt a wave of pity. Mark was so threatened by my success that he had to invent a narrative where I was the villain. "Let him talk," I told Liam. "Anyone who matters knows the truth." The gossip eventually reached Julian's old social circle, which resulted in an invitation to a gallery opening from Patricia Stevens, an art dealer who had been one of my uncle's closest friends. "Several people are saying things, Ava. I'd like to hear your side of the story." I went to the event with Liam. The gallery was filled with architectural photography, including several of Julian's most famous buildings. Patricia greeted me with a warm hug. "You have your uncle's eyes." "Same fire. I hear people have questions." "About the will? About Julian?" Patricia smiled. "Darling, those people are just jealous gossips. Julian talked about you constantly in his final years. He was so proud of you, even when you two weren't speaking. He showed me your notebooks once. Said you were going to outshine him one day." "Yeah, okay." By the end of the night, I had met a dozen of Julian's closest confidants, all of whom shared stories of how he had followed my life from a distance, how he had planned this inheritance for years, and how he had known I needed to find my own way out of my marriage. "Your ex is spreading these rumors because he's a small, threatened man," one renowned architect told me bluntly. "Julian always said you can judge a person's character by how they react to another's success. Mark is showing the world exactly who he is." On the drive home, Liam asked, "Do you regret any of it? The marriage, the lost time?" I thought about it seriously. I regret the time I lost. I regret believing his lies for so long, but I don't regret the journey itself because it brought me here. If I hadn't hit rock bottom, I might never have truly appreciated what it feels like to stand on top of the world, or I'd be insufferable about it. You're not insufferable, you're confident. There's a difference. And Julian would approve. He always said false modesty was just another form of lying. Spring brought a new set of challenges. The Chicago shelter was nearing completion, and Isabella's design was already attracting national attention from city planners who wanted to replicate it. But our success also bred more scrutiny. A man named Marcus Vance, the CEO of a rival firm, started a whisper campaign questioning our methods. He suggested we were exploiting the fellows, that our growth was a fluke, and that I was just riding Julian's coattails. It was standard, insecure competitor nonsense. Liam advised me to ignore it. Engaging with him just gives him legitimacy. But I was done with men underestimating me. When Marcus published an op-ed in a major architectural journal criticizing the fellowship model, I decided to respond publicly. My article was titled, "Building Bridges: Why Architecture Needs New Voices." I laid out the entire structure of our fellowship, from the compensation to the mentorship model. I addressed the issue of privilege head-on. Marcus Vance inherited his firm from his father. I don't begrudge him that advantage, but I do judge him for trying to pull the ladder up behind him. The real question isn't whether programs like the Croft Fellowship are exploitative. It's whether our industry can finally evolve beyond its roots in nepotism to truly serve the communities we design for. The article went viral. Architecture schools shared it. Young architects championed it. Marcus ended up looking exactly like what he was, a privileged man who was threatened by change. Julian's old friends rallied around us. Patricia wrote a glowing letter to the editor praising the fellowship. Other prominent architects followed suit, creating a wave of support that completely drowned out Marcus's criticism. But all this attention brought something else. A producer from a major streaming network reached out. They were developing a documentary series on transformative architecture and wanted to feature the Chicago shelter, the fellowship, and my story. This is massive exposure, our marketing director said, but it also means opening up your personal life to a whole new level of scrutiny. I looked at Liam. What do you think? I think you'll do whatever your gut tells you is right, but really consider what you're comfortable sharing. Your story is powerful, but it's also yours. That night, we talked it through. If I do this, they're going to ask about my marriage, about why Julian and I were estranged. You'd have to talk about Mark, which means talking publicly about emotional abuse, Liam said quietly. I hadn't really thought of it in those terms. I don't want to give him that much space in my story. He already stole 10 years. But as I said the words, I had a realization. Mark wasn't the story, Julian was. My resilience was. Mark was just the obstacle I had to overcome. I'll do it, I decided, but I control the narrative. They film what I allow them to film. This is going to be architectural journalism with emotional depth, not a reality TV spectacle. The film crew arrived in May. For 2 months, they documented everything. The opening of the Chicago shelter, where Isabella gave a speech that made me cry with pride. The fellowship students presenting their designs to real clients. Board meetings that were now filled with mutual respect instead of power struggles. They interviewed Julian's friends who shared their stories. They interviewed Clara, who talked about watching Julian track my life from afar, his pain at seeing me struggle. And yes, they asked about Mark. In the interview, filmed in Julian's studio, I kept it concise and powerful. I was married to a man who needed me to be small so that he could feel big. He viewed my education not as an asset, but as a threat. The divorce was financially devastating, but it was emotionally liberating. Sometimes, losing everything is the only way to find yourself. The interviewer tried to press for more details, but I just smiled and shook my head. The specifics of his behavior don't matter. What matters is that I survived, and I built something beautiful from the wreckage. That's the only part of the story worth telling. He gets to be a footnote, and frankly, even that feels generous. The documentary was fast-tracked for the streaming service's fall lineup. When it aired in August, just 4 months after they started filming, the response was overwhelming. Architecture students wrote to me, sharing their own stories of family pressure. Women sent messages thanking me for talking about emotional abuse without sensationalizing it. The fellowship received over 1,000 applications for the next year, and Mark called again, because apparently the man had the learning capacity of a sea sponge. I was at dinner with Liam when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I answered on a whim. Ava. It's Mark. I froze. Liam immediately reached across the table and took my hand. How did you get this number? I saw the documentary. You made me look like a monster. I never even mentioned your name. If you saw yourself in the description of an emotionally abusive, controlling man, that says a lot more about you than it does about me. It's called introspection, Mark. You should look into it. People know it was me. Our old friends, our former neighbors. You're ruining my reputation. I laughed, a real, genuine laugh. Mark, I haven't given you a single thought in months. I don't care about your reputation. I told my truth. If that makes you uncomfortable, maybe you should reflect on why. Your delusion is honestly impressive. I want a public apology. A statement saying I wasn't abusive, that the divorce was amicable. No. Ava, I'm warning you. No, Mark, I'm going to say this one last time. You spent 10 years trying to convince me I was worthless. You took every penny in our divorce. You belittled my education. And now that I've built a life for myself, you want to rewrite history so you can feel better about yourself. I stood up and walked outside the restaurant. I don't owe you a thing. Not my silence, not my comfort, not another second of my time. You are a footnote in my life story. Lose my number, lose my name, and lose any hope that I will ever consider you relevant again. I hung up and immediately called Eleanor. Mark just demanded a public apology. I need you to draw up a cease and desist letter. If he contacts me or anyone associated with me ever again, I want to pursue full legal action. Consider it done, Eleanor said. And Ava, I'm proud of you. Back at the table, Liam was waiting, a proud smile on his face. You okay? I'm perfect. He tried to make me small again, and I wouldn't let him. That felt amazing. A woman from the next table leaned over. I'm so sorry to eavesdrop, but I saw your documentary. Thank you for being so honest about your marriage. My own daughter is in a relationship just like that. I think your story might give her the courage to leave. I gave her my business card. Have her call my office. I'm always happy to talk to anyone who needs to hear that they're not alone. As we left the restaurant, Liam wrapped his arm around me. You're changing lives, Ava. Not just with your buildings, but with your story. That's Julian's real legacy, isn't it? Not the skyscrapers, but the belief that architecture is about people, about creating spaces where their lives can be transformed. The partnership vote took place in October, exactly 1 year after I had taken over as CEO. Liam had been acting as senior partner, but the board needed to formally approve his elevation to co-CEO alongside me. I had braced for some resistance. What I got was a unanimous vote of approval and a complete surprise. Before we adjourn, said Patricia Stevens, now a key board member, there is one other matter. Ava, the board has received an offer to acquire Croft Designs. I froze. What? She slid a document across the table. Marcus Vance's firm wants to buy us out. He's offering $300 million for a full acquisition. Apparently, he's been losing major clients to us all year, and after we secured those 3 big international contracts, he decided that if you can't beat them, buy them. Since you hold a 51% stake, the decision is ultimately yours. $300 million. My personal share would be over $150 million. Financial security for the rest of my life. It's a trap, Liam said instantly. Marcus spent months trying to undermine us. The offer is legitimate, Patricia confirmed. My guess is he wants to absorb our talent and methods, then dismantle the competition from the inside. I read the terms. A complete acquisition meant Marcus would control everything. The name, the projects, the fellowship. He could dissolve it all and erase Julian's legacy with the stroke of a pen. No, I said, without a second of hesitation. Ava, that's a tremendous amount of money, Patricia said gently. You should at least take some time to consider it. I don't need to. Julian did not leave me this company so I could sell it to a man who embodies everything he fought against. The answer is no. The board members exchanged looks. Then Patricia broke into a wide smile. That's exactly what we were hoping you'd say. You see, Julian included a provision in his will that we were not permitted to disclose until you had been CEO for 1 full year and had been faced with a major acquisition offer. She pulled out another document. If you rejected any substantial offer to sell the company, you were to receive an additional trust he established. $30 million, unrestricted, for understanding that some legacies are not for sale. I leaned back in my chair, completely stunned. He was testing me, even from the grave. He wanted to be sure you valued the work more than the wealth. Many people would have taken the money. Julian needed to know you would choose the mission. Liam was watching me, his expression unreadable. How do you feel? I thought about it. A year ago, I might have been furious at the manipulation, but now I saw it differently. Julian hadn't been controlling me. He had been proving to me what I was capable of. I feel like he knew me better than I knew myself. A year ago, I might have sold, but now, this company isn't just Julian's legacy anymore. It's mine too, and it's not for sale. The vote to make Liam co-CEO passed without a single objection. As the meeting concluded, Patricia pulled me aside. "Julian left you one more thing." She handed me a small velvet box. "His instructions were to give this to you after you passed the acquisition test." Inside was a ring. It was a simple, elegant band with architectural blueprints delicately etched into the metal. A note in Julian's handwriting was tucked beside it. "Ava, if you are reading this, you passed my final test. This ring belonged to my wife, your great-aunt Evelyn, whom you never had the chance to meet. She was an architect, too, one of the first women to run her own practice back in the 1950s. She faced barriers you can't even imagine, but she never once compromised her vision. When she passed, I promised I would only give this ring to someone worthy of her legacy. That someone is you. Build bravely, live boldly, and never let anyone make you small again. I am so proud of you. -J*. I slipped the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. Julian had planned everything. That evening, Liam found me in the studio, gazing out at the Chicago skyline, Evelyn's ring catching the light. "Penny for your thoughts?" Julian orchestrated all of it. The inheritance, the board challenges, the acquisition offer. He laid out a series of tests designed to prove that I was the person he believed I could be. Are you angry? No, I'm grateful. He didn't just give me a company. He gave me challenges that forced me to become the architect, the leader, and the person I was always meant to be. Without those tests, I might have spent the rest of my life doubting myself. Liam wrapped his arms around me from behind. "You know what I think? I think Julian knew you'd pass every single test because you already had something that Marcus Vance and people like Mark will never understand." "What's that?" "The ability to value people over profit, to see potential where others see problems, to build up instead of tear down. That's why I fell in love with you. Not because you're Julian Croft's heir, but because you see the world as a place that's worth improving." "I love you too. You've been my partner in all of this." "Speaking of partnership," Liam said, his voice suddenly a little nervous. He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it. Inside was a simple, elegant ring with a single perfect diamond. "Ava Monroe. I'm not doing this because of some test or a timeline. I'm doing this because every day with you is better than the one before, and I want a lifetime of days watching you change the world. Will you marry me?" I looked from the ring to Liam's hopeful face, to the studio around us that Julian had built on faith alone. A year ago, I was married to a man who wanted to diminish me. Now, I was being proposed to by a man who celebrated me. "Yes," I said, tears streaming down my face. "Yes, absolutely, yes." He slipped his ring onto my finger next to Evelyn's. They looked perfect together, an old legacy and a new beginning. "Should we tell everyone tonight?" "Actually," Liam said, pulling out his phone with a grin, "I already asked Clara to have champagne ready. She's been rooting for this since the day you moved in." We went downstairs to find Clara beaming, a bottle of champagne chilling in a bucket of ice. "It's about time," she said. "Mr. Julian would be so happy." "He probably planned this, too," I said, laughing through my tears. "Probably left a letter somewhere saying how perfect Liam was for me." "Actually," Clara said, heading into Julian's study, "he did." She returned a moment later with an envelope addressed to both of us, dated the week before he died. "Liam and Ava, if you are reading this together, it means my plan worked even better than I'd hoped. Liam, you have been like a son to me. Ava, you have always been my daughter. I cannot imagine better leaders for my company, or better partners for each other. build something beautiful together. And for God's sake, please don't name any of your children Julian. That name dies with me. All my love, Jay." We laughed and cried, toasting the man who had believed in us even when we didn't believe in ourselves. The engagement announcement sent ripples through the architecture world. Architectural Monthly, wanted and exclusive. Design magazines requested photo shoots. Even some of Julian's old rivals sent surprisingly warm congratulations. But the biggest reaction, of course, came from Mark. Eleanor called on a Friday morning in November, her voice tight with fury. "Mark has filed a lawsuit. He's claiming you used marital assets to help fund your work for Croft Designs and that he's entitled to a portion of your inheritance." I just laughed. I was completely broke when we divorced. He took everything. What assets could I have possibly used? "He's arguing that your architectural knowledge, which you developed during your marriage while he was financially supporting you, constitutes a marital asset that directly contributed to your current success. It's an absurd argument, but it's designed to be disruptive and expensive to fight." Liam, who was listening on speakerphone, looked livid. "He's only doing this because she's engaged." "This is pure spite." "Exactly," Eleanor said, "which is why we're going to dismantle him." "Ava, I need any evidence you have from your marriage that shows Mark actively sabotaged your career. Emails, texts, anything where he discouraged you from working." I thought about those 10 years. I kept journals. Not ones he knew about, but I documented things. His comments about my degree being a hobby, the times he accidentally made me miss job opportunities, the ways he isolated me. Perfect. Get them to me. We're not just defending. We're filing a countersuit. For emotional distress, defamation, and harassment. Mark is about to find out that coming after you was the single worst decision of his life. Finding the journals was harder than I expected. They were buried in a storage unit, in boxes I hadn't touched since moving to Chicago. Liam came with me. As we sorted through the boxes, I found them, tucked beneath old college textbooks. "Listen to this," I said, reading from an entry dated 5 years into our marriage. "Mark told a colleague at dinner tonight that my architecture degree was my cute little hobby. When I tried to correct him later, he laughed and said I was being too sensitive, that I'd embarrassed him. I ended up apologizing. God, Liam, I apologized to him for having a dream." Liam's jaw was set like stone. "He systematically dismantled your confidence." "He tried, but he didn't succeed. I'm still standing. And he's the one filing pathetic, frivolous lawsuits." The journals painted a devastating decade-long picture of emotional and psychological manipulation. Mark criticizing my intelligence, my appearance, my ambitions. Mark conveniently losing the registration form for my licensing exam. Mark scheduling last-minute trips that coincided with interviews I had secretly arranged. Mark telling me over and over that no one else would ever love me. Eleanor reviewed the journals with a grim sense of satisfaction. "This isn't just evidence, Ava. This is a complete roadmap of abuse. Mark's lawsuit is going to backfire on him in the most spectacular way." The countersuit was filed within a week. Mark's legal team immediately reached out, offering to drop his lawsuit if we dropped ours. "Absolutely not," I told Eleanor. "He came after me when I was finally happy. He tried to ruin my engagement, my career, my peace of mind. He doesn't get to just walk away unscathed." "You understand this will all become public record, the divorce settlement, the allegations of abuse. Good. Let the world see exactly who he is. I am done protecting his reputation at the expense of my own truth." The preliminary hearing was scheduled for December. I walked into that courtroom with Liam at my side, Clara sitting behind us, and a profound sense of certainty. Mark was already there with his lawyers, a smug look on his face. That smugness vanished the moment the judge began reviewing our counterclaims. "Mr. Thompson, these are extremely serious allegations: emotional abuse, financial control, deliberate career sabotage. Your lawyer's initial filing painted this as a simple property dispute. Mark's lawyer stood. Your Honor, these are baseless and exaggerated claims. My client financially supported Ms. Monroe throughout their marriage. Eleanor rose smoothly. Supported her, Your Honor, or imprisoned her. We have extensive documentation showing Mr. Thompson systematically prevented Mrs. Monroe from pursuing her career. He belittled her education, sabotaged job applications, and used financial control to maintain his dominance. This was not support. This was abuse designed to keep her dependent and powerless. She presented the journals, email chains, and testimony from our old marriage counselor. By the time she was finished, Mark looked pale and small. The judge was not amused. Mr. Thompson, these documents strongly suggest your lawsuit is retaliatory and without merit. Ms. Monroe received her inheritance well after your divorce was finalized. You have no legal claim to it whatsoever. Furthermore, the argument that her education constitutes a marital asset when you actively prevented her from using it professionally is both legally frivolous and morally repugnant. Mark's lawyer tried to object, but the judge cut him off. Motion to dismiss is granted, with prejudice. And Mr. Thompson, you are very fortunate Ms. Monroe is not pursuing criminal harassment charges. I suggest you take this outcome as a gift and move on with your life. Outside the courthouse, a crowd of reporters was waiting. I had expected as much. Ms. Monroe, how do you feel about the judge's ruling? Vindicated. My ex-husband spent 10 years trying to make me believe I was worthless. He took everything from me in our divorce, and when I rebuilt my life, he tried to take that too. Today, a judge confirmed what I already knew. Mark Thompson is a small man who cannot handle a strong woman. I am done giving him any more power over my story. Will you pursue further legal action? No, he isn't worth my time or energy. I have buildings to design, a company to run, and a wedding to plan. Mark is irrelevant to my future, and honestly, he always was. The news clip went viral. By that evening, other women who had known Mark began coming forward with their own stories, revealing a clear pattern of controlling and manipulative behavior. His business started to lose clients. His reputation, which he had been so desperate to protect, crumbled. Not because of anything I did, but because his true character was finally exposed to the light. Liam found me that night on the estate's rooftop, looking out at the glittering city. How are you really feeling? Free, finally completely free. He can't touch me anymore. His opinion, his existence, none of it affects my happiness. Julian would be so proud. You turned your pain into power. That was his plan all along, wasn't it? Every test, every challenge, it was all building toward this. Toward me finally understanding that I am not defined by the man who tried to break me, but by how I rebuilt myself. So what's next for you? You faced down your demons, revolutionized the company, and started an industry-wide movement. What does Ava Monroe do for an encore? I smiled, pulling out a sketch I'd been working on. I want to use the $30 million from Julian's final trust to do something big, a nationwide public architecture initiative. We'll design and build libraries, community centers, and public parks in underserved areas. Spaces created with the same care and innovation usually reserved for luxury high-rises. Architecture that serves everyone. Liam studied the sketches. A nationwide initiative. That's ambitious. Julian always said the best architecture should be democratic. That beauty and innovation shouldn't be reserved for the wealthy. This is how I honor his memory while making my own mark. Our own mark, Liam corrected gently. Partners, remember? I kissed him, my tears tasting of happiness. Partners. In everything. Our wedding took place in April, exactly 18 months after I had climbed out of that dumpster. We kept it small, just 100 people, held in the rooftop garden of the estate that Julian had designed decades ago. Isabella, who had graduated from the fellowship and become a full-time architect at the firm, was my maid of honor. She cried when I asked her, "You didn't just change my career, Ava. You changed my whole understanding of what was possible." "You did that yourself," I told her. "I just held the door open." Patricia walked me down the aisle, Julian's best friend, acting as the family I had chosen. Clara sobbed through the entire ceremony, clutching a handkerchief that Julian had apparently left for her specifically for this occasion. Liam's vows were simple and perfect. "Ava, you taught me that true partnership means celebrating each other's strengths, not competing with them. You have made me a better architect and a better man. I promise to always see you, to always challenge you, and to always believe you are capable of the impossible." My vows were harder to get through without crying. "Liam, 18 months ago, I was convinced I was broken and that no one would ever want me. You didn't just prove that wrong, you made me realize I was never broken at all. I was just waiting to find someone who saw my cracks as the places where the light could get in. Thank you for being my partner, in every sense of the word, and for loving me exactly as I am." We danced under a canopy of string lights, surrounded by the people who had witnessed my transformation. The documentary crew was there to film a brief epilogue, the final chapter of what had become an award-winning series on architecture, resilience, and second chances. As the evening wound down, Liam pulled me back up to the studio. On the main drafting table was a large leather portfolio I'd never seen before. "Julian left this with Patricia," he explained, "with instructions to give it to us on our wedding day." Inside were dozens of sketches, designs Julian had created over the years, but had never had the chance to build. Community centers, public schools, affordable housing projects, architecture for the people society too often overlooks. A final note was tucked inside: "Ava and Liam. These are the dreams I ran out of time to realize. Now they are yours. Build them together. Build them boldly. Build them for the people who need proof that someone out there sees their worth." Architecture is not just about creating beautiful spaces. It's about creating spaces that make beautiful lives possible. I love you both. Now stop reading and go dance with your wife, Liam. Jay. We laughed through our tears. Julian's voice so clear it was as if he were in the room with us. Then we went back to the party, to the life we were building together. The Public Architecture Initiative launched the following year. Using Julian's trust and additional funding from the firm's profits, we began designing and building libraries, community centers, and public parks all across the country. Each project incorporated sustainable design, featured local artists, and was developed with direct input from the community it was meant to serve. Architecture as a collaboration. Isabella led the design for the new Philadelphia Community Library, her first project as lead architect. I attended the grand opening, watching her explain her vision to the press with a calm confidence. "Architecture saved my life," Isabella told a reporter, "not just as a career, but as proof that I could build something meaningful." Ava Monroe taught me that buildings are more than just structures. They are promises that a better future is possible. I found Isabella afterward and hugged her tightly. "Julian would have loved this. He would have loved you." "I know," she said, her eyes shining, "because you loved me enough for both of you. Thank you for seeing the potential in me when I couldn't see it in myself." Croft Designs continued to grow steadily over the next few years. We weren't chasing prestige projects anymore. We were pursuing work that aligned with our values. We designed schools in underserved neighborhoods, affordable housing that didn't sacrifice beauty for budget, and public spaces that brought communities together. We won awards, yes, but more importantly, we changed lives. Mark faded into total obscurity. His business failed, and his reputation was destroyed by his own actions and the chorus of women who came forward with similar stories of his behavior. I would hear about it occasionally from old acquaintances and feel nothing at all. No satisfaction, no vindication, just complete and total indifference. He had finally become what he had always truly been: irrelevant. 5 years after taking over the firm, I was invited to give the commencement address at my old architecture school. I stood at the podium, looking out at a sea of hopeful faces that reminded me so much of the person I used to be. When I graduated from this school, I began. I had a degree, a dream, and an absolute certainty about my future. Within a year, I had abandoned all of it for a man who needed me to be small. For 10 years, I disappeared into a life that was not my own. But here is the secret I learned in the dark. You can't ever truly lose yourself. You can misplace yourself, sometimes for a very long time, but your essential self is always there, waiting for you to remember it. When I finally left that marriage, I had nothing. No money, no home, no confidence, but I did have my education. I had my passion, and I had a great uncle who believed I was worth waiting for. Some of you will follow a straight path from this day forward. Others will take a long and winding detour through darkness before you find your way. Both journeys are valid. What matters is that you remember this. You are architects. You see potential in empty spaces. You understand that a foundation must be strong before a building can rise. Apply that same vision to your own lives. Build yourselves carefully, honestly, and courageously. And if life ever tries to tear you down, remember that you are uniquely trained to reconstruct from the ruins. The applause was thunderous, but what meant more were the students who came up to me afterward, sharing their own stories and thanking me for being honest. If this story resonated with you, please make sure to like this video and subscribe for more stories about transformation, resilience, and the incredible power of refusing to stay small when the world tries to diminish you. That evening, I flew back to the estate where this new chapter of my life had begun. Liam was in the studio working on sketches for a new children's museum in Detroit. Clara had dinner waiting. I climbed up to the rooftop garden, the place where Julian had imagined my homecoming all those years ago. The city stretched out below, a tapestry of buildings designed by people with dreams and determination. I thought about the woman who had climbed out of that dumpster, convinced she had lost everything. I wished I could go back and tell her what was coming. But more than that, I wished I could tell her the most important thing of all. She was already everything she needed to be. She just needed the time and space to remember it. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Isabella. Just landed the commission for the San Francisco Community Arts Center. Your blueprint is changing the country. Thank you for believing in me. I smiled, typing back a quick reply. Thank you for proving Julian was right about potential. You're going to outshine all of us one day. Liam joined me on the rooftop. What are you thinking about? Everything. Where I was, where I am, and where we're going next. And where is that? I turned to face him, this man who had chosen to build alongside me, not in front of me. Wherever we design next. Together. Together, he agreed. And in that one word, there was everything. Partnership, trust, love, and the shared understanding that the best architecture, whether it's in buildings or in lives, is created by people who refuse to dim each other's light. Julian had given me more than an inheritance. He had given me the gift of hitting rock bottom so hard that I finally understood what solid ground felt like. He had proven that sometimes the people who love you most have to let you struggle because they believe you are strong enough to save yourself. And I had saved myself. I had built myself back, stronger than before, and I had created a legacy that had nothing to do with inheriting success and everything to do with becoming exactly who I was always meant to be. The city lights glittered like a blueprint waiting to be filled with purpose. Tomorrow I would go back to the office, to the projects and the problems and the beautiful, complex work of creating spaces that change lives. But tonight, I stood on Julian's rooftop with my husband beside me, wearing Evelyn's ring next to my own, and I finally understood the truth my great uncle had spent a decade teaching me. You can take everything from a person except their ability to rebuild. And when they rise from the ashes, they don't just go back to who they were, they become something better, something truer, something unstoppable. I wasn't Julian's protege anymore. I wasn't Mark's victim. I wasn't even just Ava Monroe, CEO. I was an architect, not just of buildings, but of second chances, of possibility, of futures built on the radical belief that everyone deserves a space to grow into their best selves. And that was the only inheritance that ever truly mattered. End of story.